Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Need Access Customization. I'm Ann Garandetta, Internal Account Executive and Need Access Technical Lead. With me today as panelists, I have Jim Misty, Need Analysis Expert and our longtime Need Access Consultant, Kim Sawarski, National Sales Director, Amy Manfredi, Director of School Services and Client Management, and Teresa Lawson, Internal Account Executive. Today's session will focus on the Setup tab of the Need Access School Administrator, including how to create and use flex fields, calculation options, both global and individual overrides, creating custom reports, and an overview of custom export file layouts. We'd like to start with a couple quick housekeeping notes. By default, your phones are set on mute, so we will not hear anything you say. So if you have any questions, please send them to our panelists through the chat feature on the right-hand side. You'll see as you go to create a chat message, you have a drop-down list of options on who to send the note to, and if you pick all panelists, then we'll make sure we get back to you as soon as possible. Depending on the type of question, we might answer it by chat right away, verbally when we take a break for questions, or by email after the session for more in-depth or school-specific questions. We're going to try something a little different this week, and occasionally after we finish large sections of content, we're going to try opening up the phone lines to questions. We'll have to see how that goes, but we'll give it a try. As we open them up, if you have a question, please first state your name and your school, and then let us know what your question is, and we'll do everything we can to answer it. Okay, before we jump into the heart of today's presentation, I'd like to recap a couple items from last week. Hopefully all of you were able to join us, but for those of you who weren't, these might be helpful as well. So, let's see. Bear with me for just a moment. Perfect. So this is the Need Access School Administrator site. When you log into 2012-2013, on the school side using needaccess.org, this is what you'll see, as many of you have already found out. This screen replaces the Need Access Counselor. It has the same functionality. We've just updated the name, given it a bit of a facelift, and delivered all the files here to you directly. You no longer have to log in to download files or import them. You just log in here, everything's at your fingertips, and you're done. All of the Need Access applications are processed real time and are delivered within 10 minutes to this screen for you. So there's no waiting overnight or having any delays in accessing them. They're all right here. There are 4 Need Access statuses, and they're systemically controlled by user actions. Those statuses, again to recap, are new, viewed, edited, and exported. The statuses cannot be manually adjusted. In other words, you can't go back and mark someone as new once you've looked at them. They're entirely controlled by actions taken in your office. Here on the screen, under the status column, you can see a few examples. Most of them happen to be exported. And across the top here, you can see the search feature using those 4 statuses. Resubmissions are when an applicant logs back into the student side of the web, changes data, and submits again. Resubmissions are, by default, automatically processed for any new and viewed applications. For edited and exported records, you'll be prompted to load any resubmissions by a note here under the... Again, this is just a recap of last week, so if you have any specific questions after this, let us know, and we'll be happy to address that in a one-on-one session. Okay. I mentioned that the default status was to automatically load a resubmission for new and viewed applications and to prompt you for edited and exported applications. That's the default, but it was an option in registration that you may have already changed, and you can still change. Since registration is closed, you would need to let us know by sending us an email to nasupport@accessgroup.org, and we can change that for you if you'd like to handle how those are submitted a little differently than you are now. Okay. If you load a resubmitted application and then decide you really wanted to stay with the original app, you can go to Application Versions and load any previous applications as they were submitted by the student. We do not support school changes in between versions, but we allow you to toggle between student-submitted versions at any time. Again, if you'd like to see that, just let us know, and we'd be happy to show you at a later point. Something I wanted to mention last week and did not is that the internal account executive team here at Access Group is now handling all Need Access calls, including those from students and parents. And then the last thing we wanted to mention is that the Need Access user guide is now posted, and I'd like to show you in production where that is housed. So I'm going to switch here out of our test system into a production system, and you'll see over here on the right-hand side we have the Help tab. If I click on that, it'll open a new window, and it has the Help Center listed with the data dictionary, and then we also have the School Administrator System User Guide. So if I click there, it takes us straight into the heart of the user guide, and you'll see we have all the topics laid out in order. Now, one thing you may notice in Internet Explorer is that you do not have back and forth arrows at the top of these screens. So if you need to, let's say you go into a section on funds and you want to go back, you can always right-click and use the back button here to go back. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close that, and we'll go back to our test database. All right, here we are. Let's jump right into the main body of today's session by walking through our top-level navigation. The Application tab is where all of your student records are housed. We reviewed it last week in depth, and we'll be back again today, not to worry. The Registration tab is in the middle here. The contents of registration, of course, you're all very familiar with, if not this new location. Every autumn we have all Need Access schools register. You'll note if you click into this link here, you'll see all of your registration data, but you won't be able to change any of it. As I mentioned earlier, registration is closed. So any changes that need to be made, you'd have to let us know here in the office, again, by emailing na support@accessgroup.org, and we'll take a look and see if that's something that can be changed right away, and if so, we'll get that in place for you. Okay, so here we are in the Setup tab, which is really the heart of today's presentation. So again, I'm just going to recap a few of these screens very briefly. Every time you click into the Setup tab, the first screen you'll see is My Profile, which is a fairly standard page. Gives you an option to change your security image, your security phrase, any of your text questions. You can also change your password. This screen is specific to you and will only be seen by you. The next tab is User Setup, and you'll see here, as someone with setup rights at my university, Need Access University, I can see everyone who has permission at my university, either active or inactive. I can edit them individually if I need to make somebody inactive, if I need to change their access levels. They're all listed here. We talked briefly about this last week, but I'd like to get into a little more depth. You can see here that we have 5 levels of access to Need Access this year. So as you're setting up users in your office, you'll need to determine if they need read-only access or read-write access to 2 different areas of the Need Access system. Need Access Inquiry, and you can tell by hovering your mouse over this little question mark, gives you read-only access to all of the Need Access pages, so everything on the Application tab. Need Access Support gives the user full rewrite access to every page on the Application tab. Same thing with Registration Inquiry is a read-only version of the Registration tab, so even when registration is open in August and September, these users would only be able to view registration data, not able to change it. Registration Setup is a read-write version of the Registration tab. And then the last option here is Setup. If this one is checked, then the user can access and make changes to any of the sub-tabs underneath this Setup menu here. Okay, you'll see that you, in your office, if you have the setup right, have permission to reset passwords for everyone in your office. You can also unlock accounts if they've locked themselves out. The last main thing that I'd really like to emphasize is that as you're setting up new users, please be sure to add a school or schools to them. If you're in an office where you have both medical and dental oversight and you have Need Access broken up into those 2 units, every user would have to have 2 lines here where it said Need Access University Medical School, Need Access University Dental School, so they have access to both. But every user must have at least 1 school added to them. So for normal setup, you'd add all of these fields, come down here and click Add School. It'll prompt you to save. we don't have very many options in this test database, but here is where I would pick a school and assign it to this person. That final step of adding a school is what generates out a password. So if you have a user you've added who has not gotten a password, double check here, and if you don't see that user, it means they didn't have a school added, so you'll need to let us know and we can help you with that. Okay. Let's take a look at our FlexFields library. In the prior system, FlexFields were known as indicators. We updated the name a little bit to reflect the fact that they're a very flexible and terrific option for your school. The FlexFields are fields that you can set that can represent anything you can think of. So let me start with an example. In the system already, one of the FlexFields we have is a dual degree status. We've set it up so that it's a text box where you can mark students with a text note up to 9 characters. So this would allow you to go through your population and mark them with dual degree. You could just make it as simple as a yes or no. You could mark them with the program of study they're in if they're doing a JD MBA or an MD, any combination you can type in that box. And I'll show you in a minute how to assign them. There are other types of FlexFields you can use. You can have calculated ones. Here we have a total adjusted gross income, which we calculated in a different area as the student adjusted gross income plus the parent adjusted gross income plus the non-custodial parent's adjusted gross income. So you could then invoke that figure in packaging or in your sort fields on the main menu and be able to see the total for all 3 populations at once. Another couple examples we thought of offhand, indicators that schools might like to add to records would be perhaps satisfactory academic progress. You'll see we've set this one up as a flag with a 1-character length, so you would just say yes or no, they're either making satisfactory academic progress or not. And then another example that we came up with was an assigned counselor. So for larger offices who still work in an alphabetical assignment, you might be able to go through and assign all of the students A through J to Counselor Bob and so forth. So let's take a look at how we would add a new FlexField from scratch. Okay, you'll see here we have 3 options: name, date type, data type, and length. So let's see. Okay, so a good new FlexField might be, say we wanted to do, that's actually a good question. Jim, I used my dual degree indicator on that.
Shoe size.
Okay. Jim has proposed shoe size, which should show us that these really can be anything you think of that can fit your office's process. So let's say we wanted to do shoe size. Obviously, that would be a numeric indicator, and it would need to be 2, I think, is the possible maximum. So we'll go ahead and save and close that. And you'll see now we have our FlexField listed here. So let's head back to our now that we've shown you where the FlexFields are, how to edit, and, you delete them in this column over here. You can edit them by clicking on them. It brings it up, and you can change any of those fields. So now that we've gone through setting up and managing FlexFields, let's take a look at applying FlexFields to students. So let's say we knew for a fact that one student in particular was planning on doing a dual degree program. We would come in here, search for that particular student. You can search by last name, first name, applicant ID, statuses, as I mentioned before, year in school, any combination of these fields to bring up your student. And let's say we knew that this particular student was planning on doing a dual degree. We would then come in here to manage students list, indicate that we wanted to affect that student by checking the box next to them. If we had a list of students and we wanted to affect all of them, we could check this box at the top to take everyone. Now, we want to set FlexFields here in the middle, and dual degree. Let's say we wanted to indicate that the student was going to be pursuing a JD MBA. Actually want to check this box over here to the right to indicate that this is the line that I want applied to all of my students. And while we're at it, let's say he has a shoe size of 11. Again, check the box to indicate that I want to apply this line to that student, and then save and close. I'm confirming that I'd like to add that to the student, and then I'm going to go back to my student list. I can do that either by clicking the previous button or the Applications tab up at the top. Now, when I get back out here, the student does not look any different, but let's delve into his record. He has a tab here called Set Flex Fields. As I click into it, we see all of our different flex fields, so I could set any of them from this screen as well. You can see I've already set one or two of them. But here we have the dual degree status and the shoe size that I just set. Okay, and I'm actually going to try opening the phone lines very quickly to see if anyone has any questions on flex fields.
The conference is no longer in lecture mode.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions on creating, using, or applying flex fields to students?
I would just mention, Anne, that on the screen you're showing right now, you could also just come to this screen and set the flex field for one student at a time.
Correct.
If that were your preference.
The Applications tab functionality can be used for batch applying or individual applying of flex fields. From within the student record, you'd be affecting individual records only. So again, here's that student. Here's Manage Students List, which is where I would handle batch applying anyone who is in this list, or I can click into him and go to Set Flex Fields to apply an individual flex field. Okay, and I'm not hearing any questions.
I have one.
Oh, good. Go ahead.
So did you say we could use this to calculate field so we could add two things up like AGI and, I don't know, assets or something like that?
Absolutely, and that's what I've reflected here with this total AGI line. So let's actually take a look at how I calculated that. So we're going to jump back over to the Setup menu. And I run the calculation from within my funds packaging list. So ignore everything below the top 4 lines. We just want to focus in on these really 3 lines here. So you can see the very first thing I started with was compute. When you click here, it brings up our field picker, which gives you every field in the Need Access application, both student entered data, calculated data, and our flex field. So I want to start out with flex field. I can pick from the 2 we've created so far. So I have total AGI. You can go ahead and select that here. Now, an important note, you'll see there's 2 flex fields, even though you know we had satisfactory academic progress and counselor and all of those. The only 2 it showed me there were the 2 with numeric statuses, because they're the only 2 I can compute into. So, and actually, hang on one second, I'm going to put the phone right back on mute.
The conference is in lecture mode.
Excellent. Okay, so we have our flex field total AGI, and we're asking for that to be equal to, and again, this can be whatever you need. You can use ESCs, you can use contributions from income or assets, however you'd like to break it down. So what we were talking about doing here is going into the, actually, hang on.
Probably the application tab?
Yes. Yep. So, and there it goes. It came right back for me. So here we have, now.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. So we have our need analysis section, and you can see each column or each colon breaks down the tree of the field picker. So in this case, I clicked on the need analysis tree, then I clicked on the student tree, then I clicked on the federal methodology tree, and found my way to adjusted gross / taxable income for 2011. And again, that's from the student. So then I continued down here and switched to the parent tree, still federal methodology, AGI from 2011, and then added the non-custodial for adjusted gross income. So I'm actually going to cancel out of this since I didn't make any changes. And again, you can ignore the rest of the page. That's something we'll be covering in a subsequent session. That's really all of the funds packaging rules. But I'm using the top few lines of it as my calculation engine. That's where you would place something like that. And again, you can have any number of flex fields that you calculate from any grouping of numbers that you'd like. It's entirely up to you. Now, let's say I wanted to see that number as I calculated it from everyone. I'll come back here to my Applications tab. I just cleared my search results, so I have a full list of students again. I'm going to go to my sort field. I'm going to click the plus here again, which is going to open my field picker. I'm going to open flex fields. You'll see it gives me all of the flex fields that I have available, and I want total AGI. And when I pick it, it'll populate this right-hand sort field column. for everyone that it's calculated so far, which, yeah. So we can see here that we have the adjusted gross income. Again, this number represents the student plus the parent plus the non-custodial parent. And I can click on the header sort field to sort ascending. Now, I haven't run the numbers on everyone, so, you're seeing that not everyone is here. So I clicked it once, and it sorted ascending again to sort descending, and you can see all of the numbers are listed here. And again, that number is also visible as I go into a student, into Flex Fields, and I view his total adjusted gross income line here. Again, this is test data, so some of the numbers are not as realistic. So, okay.
The conference is no longer in lecture mode.
All right. Are there any questions on Flex Fields?
We have a question. I'm trying to understand it. Someone is asking, just to clarify, and their statement is, you cannot batch post Flex Fields to all applicants, but that's their statement, and I think our statement is that you can batch post a change to all applicants.
Right. Let's say we have all. Right now, I've cleared my search results, so I have everyone possible under Need Access University. I have a total of 78 applicants listed. And let's say I wanted to mark all of them with a particular field. I could come into Manage Students List, click here to activate all of them, set Flex Fields, and let's say I knew offhand that every single one of them was making satisfactory academic progress. I say yes here. Again, click the Apply box to make sure this is the line that's being applied to everyone, and hit Save and Close.
Select those that are first years, and I'll highlight them on, and I'll export.
The conference is in lecture mode.
Okay, it's just saving here. Now, again, because I did a larger population, it's going to take a little longer. And more importantly, this is on our test server, so it's a much smaller server, and everything takes a lot longer than it would in production. So give me just a minute. But this is a way you could go through and mark everyone active if you wanted to, or inactive until you've had a chance to review them yourself. There we are. Okay, so now we're done. So if we head back to our Applications tab, and we're going to switch up our sort field. So I'm going to click the plus to open the field picker, and I'm going to go to Flex Field, Satisfactory Academic Progress, and select. That populates our Sort Field 1 column with the field that I've indicated, and you'll see that everyone is yes. Again, I can click the name sort field to sort ascending. You can see there's a teeny tiny little arrow there that shows we're ascending. Click again to sort descending, which should be exactly the same because I set everyone in the system to yes.
The other thing to mention here, Anne, is that you just said we can do this for everybody, but on any of these batch functions like this, we can also pre-select a group of students. So let's say we wanted to do this for all of the second-year students. We could pick second-year students in our sort, get that list of students showing, and then assign all of those students some particular value for their Flex fields.
That's a very good point. So as Jim mentioned, this Manage Students List is a batch functionality, so it affects everyone in my search results. So let's say I did not want first-year graduates, and I went through and just second, third, and fourth-year graduates up here and searched on them. And again, that can be in conjunction with any other search item. So let's say I only wanted people who were edited. If I'd, removed it down to just that status, that would affect the search results as well. So now when I go into Manage Students List, you'll see I only have those two students, and I can, again, click the top box to select all of them, or if I'm working from a paper list, I can check one or two to affect them accordingly. Now we see they're currently marked as active. Let's try setting them to inactive instead as a different example. Active inactive is also a Flex field, but it comes built into the system, so you don't have to create it. It has its own button down here, as you saw. It's not attached to the Set Flex Field submenu. And then you'll see here, if I mark them both inactive and hit Save and Close, and then I can return to the applicants list by either clicking Previous or the Applications tab up above. The other big differentiator for the active-inactive indicator is that it has its own dedicated column in the main body of the application. So, of course, you can see it right away. You can also sort on it. It also has, so here we go. I just cleared my list, so now you see everyone, and you can see their active and inactive status here. And we can click here to flip them to, so let's say I only wanted to show my inactives, I could search on them that way. Okay.
The conference is no longer in lecture mode.
All right, I think that wraps up everything I can think of for set flex field. Does anyone have any questions on batch applying, individual applying, uses for flex fields?
Why don't we spend just a moment on the built-in flex fields?
Okay.
So you were just talking about the active and inactive, and then we should probably mention for those who may not have heard this before, that when the students are first loaded, anyone who is a first-year student is loaded as inactive, and anyone who is loaded, who is a second-year or higher student, is loaded as active. The rationale there is that the first-year students are more prone to apply to many schools, including perhaps some schools that they're not admitted to. So we automatically load those as inactive and give the school the opportunity to go in and decide whether they should be in their active list or not. So, and then Ann showed you that it's easy to pick, to select only the active students. So it makes it fairly easy for you to manage your the list of students you're looking at when you do that. There are, is it two other ones? The hidden is one. You want to talk through that one?
Yes. Another one of the built-in flex fields that will come by default is the hidden indicator. And the idea behind that is if you have a student you never want to see your screen again. Let's say it's someone who has already told you they're not planning on attending your institution, someone you know will never be accepted to your institution, someone who filled out the wrong year's need access application, and you just don't want them listed in your general population. The way you would adjust that is to come in here, find the student in question, either alphabetically. Again, you could find him by searching on the front screen, or you can find him by scrolling through here. I have two pages, so I'm going to click to the next page.
The conference is in lecture mode.
Okay. And then let's say I check the individual student, come down here to set flex field, and in this case I would be looking for the hidden indicator. Now, you'll see there's an orange question mark here. Again, throughout most of the need access application, that indicates that we have some more information to give you. As you click or hover over those, it normally opens up a submenu. It's a little small today, I know, but hopefully in your screens it would show up a little bigger. But you can see here that it sort of recaps what we just said, which is to say that by marking them as hidden, they go away forever. So if I toggle him to say that he's hidden, value yes, and apply it, which I'm actually not going to do because we don't have a lot of test data, so I'm going to skip it. But if I were to hit save and close here, it would mark him as hidden, and then from my applications tab, I would never see him again. Never, ever. So X-Ray Juliet 01 would disappear for good. Now, that said, if I wanted to find X-Ray Juliet and mark them unhidden, let's say suddenly they magically did get in, you would come back in here to the Manage Students list, and even though they're hidden on the Applications tab, as long as you don't have any search criteria up here, they'll always show up on the Manage Students list to be marked unhidden. Okay, and it sounds like we have a question on an exported status?
Right. Someone was just asking what triggers the export status to be set. Because they had done an export, status wasn't set, so I'm guessing I know what happened there, but I'll explain if you...
Okay. All right, great. Oh, I think that's from the production side. Yeah, there we are. Okay, so back in test. So we were talking a little bit about the fact that the Manage Students list is a batch function located down here, and it affects the students in my search results when I pick them. The export functionality is also a batch search result. So what I'm going to do to make it go a little faster is just pick one particular student. So bear with me for just a second. Okay, you'll see I have 78 records retrieved, and here's the date and time that I searched. So I put in a social. When I hit search, it should drop to one student received and update the time and date. So now when I go to use a batch function, it'll only affect the student in my search results. So when I go to export, you'll see that I have 4 standard export file layouts. The top two are the most commonly used. The bottom two that reference Payment Planner refer to a specific piece of third-party software that's only used by a few schools. So most of you can ignore that completely. But let's say I wanted to export standard data. Actually, you know what, very quickly, let me go back here. You'll see that the student status is edited prior. So again, we come into export. Now, if I use a standard export file layout, which again for most of you is either the standard or the standard XML, as I run this export, it would flip the student status to exported, and the student would appear in the file. However, if I use a custom export file layout, I have several listed here. Let's just try this custom one, for example. As I export him, it gives me a pop-up asking if I would like to open or save it. I'm just going to go ahead and open it right away. No, maybe I'll save it to my desktop. There we are. Okay, and now I'll go ahead and open it. Okay, so you'll see this is my CSV file export, which means that it drops each of the data fields into its own column. In my particular custom file layout, I had last name, first name, middle initial, email address, city of residence, and some financial numbers listed here. If we go back now to this student in question, you'll see that his status is not flipped. It's still edited. The idea behind it is we wanted to make sure that we allowed schools to use the export function as the custom export file layout as a quick reporting method. So let's say you needed a short report to take with you to a scholarship committee meeting of everyone who met one particular scholarship criteria because they lived in a certain county in Ohio. You could run that quick report here, take it with you, but it wouldn't affect the exported status of your students. However, doing one of the standard file exports like this, again, will prompt me to open or save. That one I'm definitely going to save. Don't want to look at that. And now you'll see the student's status, if I refresh, has flipped to exported. So, for those of you who use a custom file export as your everyday exporting method, let's say you only have 15 fields you want to take out to your FAM system, but you would like that action to mark them as exported. What you'll do to cause that to happen is first you'll go into export with your selected population, run your custom export that you've created, export it, save it, do what you need to do. Then immediately while you have the same group searched here, come back to export, run a quick standard export data, and then you can discard the resulting file because you don't need the standard data file. But that action will be enough to flip them all to exported, so when you come in next, you'll know that they've been exported. Okay, let me go ahead and open up the phone lines again.
The conference is no longer in lecture mode.
Does anyone have any questions about exporting custom file layouts versus standard file layouts? In a minute, we're going to go in and talk about how to create custom file exports, or the layout, so you can pick and choose just the fields you want. But any questions on the first part of that? Putting in the people there. Sorry, was that directed at me?
Okay, I'll ask later, thanks.
Okay. All right, I'm not hearing anything else, so I'm going to go ahead and, Jim has something.
I'm just going to jump in on the subject of the exporting because, and the export status. We have some schools who basically use Need Access to collect the data, but then they send the data off to another system, and they do that on a routine basis for all of their students. And for them, one of those standard exports is the way they do it. So by having this export status and having it work the way it does, it should be a fairly simple routine this year to when you first do an export. Let's say February 15th, you decide you're going to export your students to that system. So you export, and then 100 of your students get exported to that system. You look at the file again on February 22nd, and now you've got a whole bunch of new students, and you can easily distinguish between the ones you've already exported and the ones you have not yet exported just by selecting that status of exported or not, selecting it up in the quick search box, and that way you can quickly narrow down your list to those students who have not yet been exported, and then export them to the new system. So it makes it a nice, fairly simple indicator that you can use for deciding which students into your new system. So that was the intention when we created that new indicator that status of exported. Now, as Ann was mentioning, I'm also going to go over this again just because sometimes it helps to have the repetition. I mean, she said everything exactly correctly, but I'm just going to repeat it. That is when we're doing when a school is doing usually that's for some ad hoc reporting.
The conference is in lecture mode.
You want to see, for instance, which students answered a certain custom question, meaning that they're eligible for some scholarship fund in a certain way, and you just want to get a quick export file that you can put out onto into an Excel spreadsheet and look at separately. Whenever you do that, we didn't want to have that kind of ad hoc reporting request interfere with the other situation where you're actually exporting data from Need Access into a third-party system. So that's why we set up the difference between whether an export affects that exported status. So again, to recap, the exported status is affected only by those first 4 standard export choices, and all of the custom export choices do not change the exported status at all. So.
Now that said, the process we talked about where you would do your custom export and then go back and do a standard export is really only necessary if you're choosing to track which students have been exported using the exported status. If you're a school that normally does not use the standard export, none of your students should be marked as exported, and you could instead choose to figure out who still needs to have a custom export file layout run by date range. So every week when you come in, you could say, okay, I haven't exported anyone since last Tuesday. Let me run a report from 1/30/1/12 through today, and I'll get everyone that's new or has resubmitted with a loaded application in that time frame. So it's really not necessary to take that double step unless you like the fact, or you want them to say exported. Okay, so now that we've gone through that, let's jump into to how you would actually create a custom file export. One of the very easiest ways to do it is to use these sort fields here. So again, I keep talking about heading to, for example, a scholarship committee meeting. Let's say you really wanted to show a financial field. So let's say the primary parent's contribution. So I went into sort field. I clicked on the plus sign to open the field picker. And I'm going to head here to the Need Analysis tab. I'm going to go to Parent, Need Access Methodology, and then I'm looking for a 9-month contribution to students. So let's go with this one. Again, I'll be populating sort field 1 with that data. Okay. And now, let's pick something different for sort field 2. I'm going to take an application data field from the student's application. And let's say for this particular report, I want to know if they're interested in public health. Now again, this is test data, so you'll see it's a little hodgepodge. We might not have answers for everyone on this question. But if I sort by them accordingly, oh gosh. Again, one of the drawbacks to the test database, bear with me for a second. There we go. Okay, good. So you'll see that I now have a very quick report in my little hands with the basic data for the student, last name, first name, last 4 of the social, year in school, and so forth. Then I have over here in my sort fields the contribution from parents through the Need Access methodology, and then the answer to a custom question, whether they were interested in public health. Now let's say I wanted to sort that even further, and I only wanted students in their 3rd year. So I can search up here to limit my results. Okay, and that gives me a much shorter list. Now let's say I wanted to, in addition, only see students who are interested in public health. I can come into this, sorry, let me break that down a little more. Come into this More Search Options box here to add an advanced search onto my existing criteria. Under Search Field, and I click here to select a field, which opens my field picker. Now I happen to know that that question is custom question, I think it's $2.99? Let's see. And there it is, interested in public health. So I'm going to say equals, actually, let's take it one step further, not equal to blank. So I don't want anyone who didn't answer the question. Again, probably not something you would get on a custom question unless you made it not required. So there. So now I have a nice short list of 6 students. Let's say, again, I wanted to print this and take it with me very quickly. Come up here to print options, telling me I can only have one printed report at a time. So I'll say, okay. Now I just want to take this grid of data that I have here, so I'm going to ask for student search results report. Go ahead and generate. Continue with the confirmation message. Now again, we're on our tiny little test server, so this will take a few minutes, but you can see I get a note here saying, had a note there saying that it was in progress. It's now complete. So as I go ahead and click download report, I'm prompted to open or save. I'm going to go ahead and save at this time. And then when I open it, you'll see I have all my search criteria at the top, so I can remember who I searched for to get these results. I can also delete it if I don't need it. And then down here, I have a replication of the grid that I saw previously. One thing to note is that it continues to say sort field 1 or 2, so you might want to remember to come in here and say parents, TSC, and then public health. So that is the most straightforward way to run a very quick report. Drop something in the sort field, use the print options to print that grid. What if you wanted to do something a little different, let's say? What if you needed more than 2 sort fields, and you needed a little more information, or you didn't care about any of these pieces of data in the middle? That is where our custom export file layouts come in. So let's go back to the Setup tab. We're going to go to Export File Layout. Okay, and let's create a brand new one from scratch, just for fun. So you'll see, once again, we have our old favorite, the field picker, listed here. We're going to start out with application data, so data entered by parents and students. Let's go to the Student tab, and we'll grab a couple of the usual suspects, last name, first name, email address, why not? So as I click them, one at a time, I can click it and I can add it. Let's say I have 2 that I want to add at the same time that are nearby. I can hold the Control key on my keyboard, grab a couple of them, and add them at the same time. You'll see they get added in the order in which I add them. But let's say I change my mind and I really want it to be first name, middle initial, and then last name. I can check the box next to last name and use these fields, these buttons on the left-hand side to move the field up and down. So if you see, I just switched last name from the top down to the bottom. I'm going to go ahead and uncheck it. Okay. And actually, I'm going to go ahead and open up the phone.
The conference is no longer in lecture mode.
Okay. Can someone give me a couple examples of types of fields that you would normally or might like to have in a custom file export? Somebody has to have a good one.
Disadvantage status?
Oh, that's a good question. Now, that's normally a custom question, right, Jim?
It is.
Okay. So normally that would be a custom question. So to find that, we would go to Application and then Student. And you'll note that the fields that are listed, and this is something I should have said earlier, anytime you see the field picker, the fields that are underneath a tree, so in this case, Application, Student, and then we have our branches, these fields reflect one-to-one the order in which the fields appear on the application. So if you're looking at a student record and something's on the 3rd page, you'd want to scroll a little way down to try and find it. All of the custom questions are grouped at the end. So we're going to head to the end of the student application. And there we are. Okay, now for our demo school here at Need Access University, we did not have a disadvantaged student question, but if we did, this is where it would be. I'll go ahead and pick, I was interested in public health as a stand-in, but again, you would see any of your custom questions listed here at the end, starting with the letter C, followed by a number. Grab it and add it to the list. Okay, what are some need analysis fields that you might want in a quick report?
Parental AGI.
Parental AGI, okay. So I'll come into the need analysis tab. I'll open the parent branch. Need access method, that should show up under both, right? Yes, it's not
One, yeah.
Okay. So we'll go into the need access methodology. He said AGI. So there we are, adjusted gross income for parents. And to be fair, let's grab it for the non-custodial parents too. So I'll close the parent tree, open non-custodial, open Need Access, and grab the adjusted gross income for the non-custodial parent too.
Just for fun,
Sure.
show the search again for AGI up in the search field. Just,
Oh, right. So what Jim's telling me is a trick that we figured out. You may note that this field picker, unlike the other ones that we viewed, does not have a little search box right above it where you can type in and pick a field. But you can use your browser's built-in search functionality. So let's say I knew the field that I wanted was under non-custodial Need Access, but for the life of me, I scrolled up and down and I just couldn't manage to find the word contribution. I can use the browser's find, which is normally Control F in this case. So you'll see in Firefox it opened a little find box down at the bottom. So let's say I'm looking for contribution. You can see it highlights everything with the word contribution, and then I can click next to look for whichever one I have in mind. So let's say I wanted contribution to student 9 months. Is that what you meant, Jim?
It isn't, but that's pretty good. I learned something today.
Oh, my goodness. I don't hear that very often from Jim. So, all right. So you'll see as I've been adding them, they're dropping in down here at the bottom. So just for continuity, because I grabbed the non-custodial parents, Need Access, methodology, contribution to student 9 months, let's go back and grab them from the parent and the student as well. Again, they reflect the display on the page, so it should be about 2/3 of the way down. And then let's grab the student. Contribution to student 9 months, sure. Okay, so here we have them. Let's play around with the order a little bit just to make sure. We'll have the student go first. And then let's say we want the non-custodial parent to go last. Again, I'll check their box, use this move down button to slide them down. So we have adjusted gross income, parent, non-custodial parent, student contribution. Okay. So again, just a sampling. You can pick obviously whatever fields you want in whatever order you want. You can pick as many of them as you want. There's no limit. Once you've saved it here, or well, before saving, you'll need to give it a name. So let's call this our new file layout, for lack of anything imaginative. Very quickly, before we leave this page, something else I'd like to note is, let's say you have 5 different scholarships and every report that you'll run starts with the same 15 fields, but then at the very end you want to add in a different field, a different custom question for each of your scholarships, like county of residence to qualify them for one, or program of study, whatever it may be. You can actually copy your custom file layout. So let's say you came in and, actually, you know what, let's do it from scratch. So I'm going to go ahead and save this and add another. Yep. Okay, now, let's say I really love that file layout. I want another one that's almost exactly like it with, just a couple fields different. I can use this copy from button. Come in here. It gives me a list of all of my custom file layouts. I can grab the one that we just created, and it replicates it here. So let's say I want to get rid of these. I just click them to remove, and then I can add whatever other fields I want to make this a unique report.
Yep.
Type in a name and save it.
Yep.
Okay. Are there any questions on that? Okay. Let's go look on how those, how a file that we export using our new custom file layout would come out. So again, in the interest of time, because we're on a smaller test server, first I'm going to clear my search results. Then I'm going to search for one particular student. Okay, so I have my one search result. Again, because this is a batch functionality, it is only affecting the student in my result here. If I had all 78 students, clicking export would be affecting all 78 of my students. So now we just created our new file layout, so I'm going to pick that down here at the bottom, click export, save my file, open my file, and you'll see. Now, currently, when you do a custom file export, it does not have a header row telling you what these fields are. So you can cross-reference it to your custom file layout manually. Hopefully, you might be able to create a header row once and then save it somewhere and just paste it in above. It is something we're looking into as an enhancement, but I don't know yet what the timing would be on that. And, of course, you could always print this page as well and have it next to you when you were creating your header row. So we have first name.
The conference is in lecture mode.
Anyway, so that's the general idea. Okay. Jim, anything else we should add on custom file layouts and exporting them?
Do you want to just show opening this file with like TextPad?
Sure.
I mean, because the file is built so that it will open in Excel as we're showing here, but it would also open in a program like Microsoft Access as well. But you can also see it in a text editor like Notepad or WordPad, and there you'll see that what it is it's a comma-separated variable file, which means that each data field is separated by a comma from the next data field to either side of it. So you can also look at the file in a just as a text file if you don't want to go into Excel to look at it.
And the CSV file format by default enters a line break between students. So if I had left it to 3 or 4 students rather than 1, you would see 3 or 4 lines here with the numbers reflected one underneath the other. Most computer systems will volunteer to open a CSV file in Excel or in a similar what's the word I'm looking for? Database.
Software?
Yeah, if you have an Excel clone, something that your school prefers to use, normally the default will be to open in Excel, but you can view them this way as well. You can, if your systems read CSVs, you can do custom exports from Need Access to do an import into your FAM system, either using this functionality or the standard export as well. Okay, and it looks like we might have a chat question. Okay.
No.
Good. All right. So that covers exporting, both standard and custom, creating custom file layouts, also using the sort fields down here to create quickie reports when you just need 1 or 2 data fields. Okay, let's head back into our Setup tab. And we're going to delve right on into calculation options. Okay, Need Access has 2 kinds of calculation options. There are student-level calculation options, which we call overrides, because they affect an individual student, and we'll talk about them in a little bit. But I'd like to start with the global calculation options. So on the Setup tab, you have this Calculation Options here tab, and it brings up the, I guess it looks like 8 calculation options that we have available to you. When you choose these options, they will affect all of your students, which is why we call them global options. What I'd like to do is actually turn it over to Jim for a minute to give my vocal cords a break and let him talk about at least the first couple of these, and then I'll jump back in.
I'm going to cheat and ask you to ask you to click on the help button.
Well, this is our demo site, so I don't think that I can log right back into this one and pull it up, or if you want my printed version. I'm putting Jim on the spot, everyone. I'm sorry about this.
Okay. I'm having Ann go to the help text because what we were able to do was prepare some very nice descriptions of what each of these tables has in content and what they do for you. So the easiest way to see what's here, and I can walk through it, is to go right into the help screen, because this shows us table by table what is in these options and what they do for you.
Let's see if I can make this a little bigger. I'm just going to zoom it in for you a little bit. It's very tiny here on our projector. Actually, let me open the phone very quickly.
The conference is no longer in lecture mode.
Can everyone see that? How is the text size? Large enough? A little too small?
That's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And can you hear me? Because I had to walk up close to the screen because I had to go on there.
The conference is in lecture mode.
was asking if you could hear, and then I proceeded to mute you. So I guess the answer is yes.
Okay.
Send us a note if you can.
Okay. So parents in college, that's an option. There's a fair bit of description here, but the idea is for many eons, the federal system included the parents in college as well as students of the parents in college in their analysis. And then some years ago, they decided to remove the parents who might be in college from the analysis. And Need Access decided that that's fine for the federal methodology, but we might have schools who want to keep the information that a parent is in college. And it's not one of those things that happens that often, but it happens. That a parent is legitimately pursuing a college degree and needs to be treated the same as another student in the family for purposes of calculating the EFC and such. So in this option, the default is no, that we're not going to include parents in college in the analysis, but you can select yes and then include those parents in college in the analysis, the way it was done in years past. Okay. Small business assets, this is another one where for many years there really wasn't a question when the system collected the data on the assets that might be in a business. They were automatically included in the analysis. Some years ago, the Federal Education Department decided to remove the assets for a small business. They defined that as less than 100 employees, in which the family was actively engaged in running the business. So we did some quick studies at the time, and it looked like this didn't affect students hardly at all. We had out of our whole database of students, there might have been 1 or 2 students affected, but for the parents, there was probably about 1 in 10 parents who had some business, and for the most part, that business was a small business that they were involved in, actively involved in managing. So it wasn't a small number of parents whose assets were going to get removed from the analysis because of this new federal rule. So what we did was said, okay, we'll follow the federal rule if that's what you want to do, but we'll give the school the option to go back and reinstate those assets, so that if it's your preference to use the old version of treating those assets, even for a small business, then that's something that you can do by selecting yes in this option. So that's one of that section. I'm sorry. The second option listed there, the SBA, the Small Business Assets option. The employment allowance option is just one that we it's not as complex a history. We're just giving the school the option to remove the employment allowance from the analysis if they choose to do so. That maximum allowance is what, $3,600 this year. So that's not a huge effect on the calculation, but it is an option that you can select. The student net worth, some schools are more aggressive than others in how they want to treat students' assets. And so this is an option that was historically available, and so it's still available, to basically say for students' assets, we're going to take all of the assets that a student has available while they're in school and basically apply them to their education. So let's say a student has $100 at the beginning of time in their investment account, and they're in a 3-year program. Well, the first year we're going to take 1/3 of that and apply it to their education, so we take 33%. The second year, there's only 2/3 left, but we're going to take half of it, and the last year we're going to take all of it. So this is an option that basically prorates the assets that a student has and tries to capture all of it into the contribution over the time period that the student has remaining in school. So again, this is a very aggressive treatment of student assets. The normal treatment is much less aggressive. It's for a student with no dependents, it's about 20% that is taken each year, and for a student with dependents, it's only about 7% each year. So this option here tends to be a much more aggressive one for schools that have that kind of posture with their student calculations. The third one, again, whether to include or exclude the asset protection allowance. The default is to include it, or to not exclude it. That's why the no's are there. But again, you have the option to be a little more aggressive and exclude that asset protection allowance. For students, trying to think. For students who don't have dependents other than a spouse, that's around $10,000 or $12,000 that gets excluded from their allowance. For students who have dependents, who have children of their own, that allowance can be much higher. It can be up in the $20,000 or $30,000 range. So this can be a significant change to their contribution if you use this option. This next one, again, this is a very old option where the schools, some schools wanted to be very aggressive in how they took whatever remained of the student's income and the parents, the students and parents' income and assets, and how much they wanted of that to apply to their expected contributions. In the normal calculations, the contribution rates range from about 20% up to about 40%, depending on income level. It's like a tax table. But in this version, if a school selects it, the contribution rate starts at 70% and then goes up to 90% after about $10,000. So again, it's a much more aggressive approach at calculating the contribution for schools who want to use that. The need access calculation percentage override. This gives the school kind of a finer level of detail where they can go into the individual contribution rates, like the contribution from income, the asset contributions, and the final contribution at the end. Some of these interact with each other, and there's some notes in the top page that basically say if you're going to use one of these, you don't use the other ones. So you can read through that if you have any interest. But this lets you set a rate that's not only just higher, like the more aggressive ones we were talking about, but you can set a lower rate. If you only wanted to use 10% for all of your applicants for a given contribution level, you could do that. Some schools, when you send out your award letters, some schools prefer to just round things off to the nearest $100, and so rather than make it look like we're more precise than we are in real life, and saying we expect your contribution to be $8,000 and $8,023, we just we let you round it to the nearest whatever. You round it to the nearest $100 or nearest $1,000 or whatever fits. And the rationale there is that you're probably going to include this figure in an award letter to the student, so it makes sense to have it be a reasonable figure. I lost my. The next one down. When the students fill out the application, when they're asked about their cash and bank account balances, they're asked the question, how much money do you have in your cash and checking accounts as of the time you're filling out the application? In these access, we also ask the question, how much you expect to have on September the upcoming academic year. So this option here gives you, the school, the choice to use that second number, how much do you expect to have on September 1st, rather than how much is in your account right this minute. And there can be, several differences as to why that number would be significantly different. First off, if a student is an entering student who is currently in the workforce, they're likely to have much more in their bank account today than they're going to have when they're a new student coming in, for that sort of thing. And then for this last one, the option to exclude part of the home equity from the institutional analysis. We know that the home equity is already excluded from the federal analyses, but the default for the institutional analyses is that we're going to include the full home equity both for the parents and for the students. However, some schools want to do something in between the two and say, well, I'm not going to go all the way to the federal approach and completely exclude the home equity, but maybe I'll exclude 50% of the home equity. So you can enter the figure here, and it can be different for students and for parents, where you can say, I'm going to exclude, a certain percentage of the home equity for a student and or a certain percentage of the home equity for parents, and modify your analysis calculations in that fashion. Why don't we ask if we have any questions about any of these?
The conference is no longer in lecture mode.
Pretty much everything that I just mentioned is covered much more coherently in this health discussion. So it's all there. You're welcome to review it and ask questions later. But does anybody have any questions right now about any of these?
Hi, Jim. This is Tony from 10.
Hey, Tony. How you doing?
Just a quick question on option number 2, where it prorates the assets.
Right.
How does Need Access know the length of the program? Is that a question that's asked in the application?
One of the questions One of the questions early on in the application is when do you expect to graduate? So if right now you said I expect to graduate in 2014, Need Access calculates backwards. It says, well, that's for the 2012-13 year. We know that that's 2 years from now. So we're going to take half of your money or half of your assets. So yes, we are using that one data field from the application in order to determine how many years they have left before they graduate.
Excellent. Thanks, Jim.
Sure.
Hey, Jim, this is Brett from Suffolk Law School. In the option 7 that we just went over, it looks like in the question that you answer yes or no, it says that do you want it to affect both the federal methodology and the Need Access methodology? And then at the bottom of the paragraph it says this will only affect the Need Access methodology. Am I missing something in there?
And I'm sorry, Brett, you were asking about this one, the student network?
7. Option 7.
7.
It's raining because I was sleeping. Oh, my mom, she'll give you all the details.
Oh, I'm so sorry. We're getting a little feedback from somebody. If you're not directly asking a question, would it be possible to put your phone on mute? Thank you. Okay, so Jim is taking a quick look at option 7. To recap Brett's question, it was, does this affect both methodologies, FM and IM, or just IM?
The question asks if you want it to affect both, and then the instructions at the bottom say it will only affect the one.
Yeah.
So it does.
Yeah.
Let us take a look at that, and then we can drop you an email.
Okay, fine. Thanks.
Yeah, my guess is that the note at the bottom. I'm sorry. I don't want to guess. We'll probably check to make sure which it is, and send you a note on that, and we'll fix this help screen to be whichever one it should be.
Okay.
If it doesn't affect the federal analysis, if that turns out to be the answer, and you want it to, this is one of those areas where obviously any school can make a professional judgment for an individual student that says, oh, by the way, there's going to be a big difference between what the student reported as their cash and savings today and what's going to be on September 1st. So I'm going to use the September 1st value instead.
Right.
So you should make an individual change to a student easily enough.
Yeah, I was thinking more that we wouldn't want it to affect both, and that I just wanted to be sure if I clicked, if I said yes, I want it to affect the IM, that it wouldn't also necessarily affect the federal.
Yeah, we'll check and we'll send you a note back.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sure thing.
Any other questions on the global calculation options?
Oh, yes. Hi, Jim. This is Janine Strickland from Johns Hopkins School of Medicine. And I wanted to know if there was a way these options can be applied to one student as far as professional judgment is concerned.
We don't have a way to do these options per se, but we have a number of individual calculation changes that we can apply to individual students. And Anna's sitting here just getting ready to jump into that part of the discussion. And so pretty much everything that you see here could be done for an individual student.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect.
Any other questions on calculation options at the global level before we jump into individual level? Okay, let me show you one last time before we leave here. This is production Need Access, and as you log in, you'll see off to the right-hand side there's this Help tab. You click that, it opens a new window, and that takes us to the user guide, which is what we were just using to go through the details of each of those calculation options. And again, flipping back to our test system, to locate the calculation options, if you want to see what your school has set or if you want to change them, you'll go to the Setup tab and then Calculation Options, and you'll see them all listed here. You'll note that the Help tab does appear on every page, and it kind of slides up and down with you, so it's always with you. But again, because we're in test, we don't have the user guide uploaded to the system yet. So, all right, last call on any questions on anything before I close the phones back down and jump into student-level calculation options.
Actually, yes. Hi, Brett again. This is a real generic question. The system going to time us out?
The system will time you out. You may have noticed as we began the session about, 15 minutes in or so, I did get a note saying that the production system had timed out.
Right.
We are looking into lengthening that. As always, I know that's a very common school request to have little to no timeout whenever possible. But I'm not, do you know?
1 hour.
It is 1 hour currently. Okay, so for schools, the timeout is 1 hour of activity. But we're checking to see if there's any flexibility to that.
Okay, and specifically I was wondering about the help manual. If that would time out, that would be inconvenient, I guess, if we were working on a student and the tab we had open with the help manual timed out.
No, the help manual actually, because it opens in a new window, will stay open. Even if you get timed out of the underlying system, you can have that open and continue to navigate through it, even if you're offline.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I actually had a question. This is actually relating to some things you were saying about the reports. So sorry, this is a little delayed, but can you actually do queries for several years back, or is it only going to be the current year?
The way the system is set up, right, we did not do any data migration. So when you log in, you will only see 2012-13. I think I have 11-12 and 10-11 here because it's the test site. But even if you do see those years as a drop-down, they don't contain any real data. Moving forward, as we launch each new year, the default academic year will be, for example, 13-14, and you can go back and do a search on 12-13. But each of those searches, because it's a drop-down list and not a checkbox, will be discrete. So you wouldn't be able to look at 3 years of data and find everybody who was interested in public health during that time, for example. You would have to run that search on each of the 3 years separately.
Okay, and then Need Access version prior to this. Okay. Okay, thanks.
And then into the counselor, of course, for 11-12, 10-11.
Right. Okay. Okay, thanks.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and put the phones on mute since we're starting to get some background noise again. So if you have any other questions, send them through to Jim by using the chat feature to send a note to all panelists.
The conference is in lecture mode.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and click into a student here, and you'll see, as always, when we go into a student, it takes us right into the first page of his need analysis report. As we said last week, this layout is identical to the old counselor. It's just given a little bit of a facelift. And you should see each of these pages looks very similar to what you've seen before, but maybe a little easier to read. We'd like to head into the Override tab. So again, it's the Student Need Analysis tab, and then this Override on the third level navigation. Okay, and you'll see here we have some override options that are very similar to the ones Jim just spoke about. And you'll also note that each of these has a little help text box next to it. Hang on. All right, so again, the options we talked about before were at the global level. They can be toggled on and off, and they affect all of your students all at the same time. And actually, that's a good note. You can actually turn one of them on to see how the numbers look. Play around with a handful of students, drop the affected field into your sort field so you can see, and then you can go back and turn it on or off, toggle it the other way to go and flip it right back. So there's no permanent effect if you want to take a look and see how those are affecting you. Okay, so again, these are the student level overrides. They will only affect one student and can be done, for professional judgment or whatever reason you need. Each one of them has a little help text option here that tells you the name of the field so that you can select it from your field picker. So let's say you wanted to, can you pick the overrides from the field picker? Actually, sorry, bear with me for just a second. Second guessing myself. At any rate, clicking on the question mark shows you
I'm pretty sure it counts, but
the long name of the field. So you can see it's the same tree setup. We have override colon, which lets you know that's the big branch. And then it goes into student, and then it goes into summer living allowance. So if you had to find it, that's how you track it down. It also tells us the length of the field. So, yeah, all of the question marks seem to be just the same.
yeah.
Okay.
So, it's also field length.
Yep, and field length. Yep, in case you're exporting. So.
The overrides definitely are included in the field picker.
Are in the field picker. Okay, good. Yep. So I was right. The reason we show the names here is in case you wanted to include the overrides and field picker. So that way you could go through and generate a report showing anyone who had entered an override at the end of the year.
These overrides here are for the kind of thing that the one school was just asking about, where for an individual student, you have some special circumstance. If they're physically challenged and they need to have, special transportation costs to buy a vehicle or whatever, just to handle their transportation or whatever. The idea with these fields is that you can basically apply professional judgment and include extra expenses or even reduce them if that's your choice to affect an individual student based on some particular circumstance in their situation, or for the parents. We've got the similar thing at the bottom of the parents. You didn't get to it yet, but in the parents field, we have a section there where we say, do we want to use projected parents data? Need Access has the option to collect both the prior calendar years parents' income and expenses, which is the same data that the FAFSA collects, but we also have the option, which most schools elect, which is to collect the following calendar year's worth of data. And this is an option to use that following calendar year's worth of data in the need analysis for the parents instead of the prior year. And this would be the kind of thing you would select. Back in the old days, for those who go back that far, the feds have had a category called displaced homemaker or dislocated worker. Basically, someone whose employment situation is going to change drastically from the prior year to the following year. Usually a decrease in income because they've been laid off or something like that, or had a health change. So this lets you apply professional judgment to say, I'm going to use the projected year's income and expenses rather than the prior year's income and expenses, because that's a better true picture of that applicant's situation.
Okay. Good.
Yeah.
All right, and as you can see, we have two categories here indicated at the top. There's a total, where you would key in a replacement value for these allowances, and then there's an add-on where for income protection or asset protection, you could key in a flat number that would be in addition to the calculated number based on the tables that we've already seen. We'll get into the bottom section here really refers to budget overrides, and we'll be talking about funds and budgets in our next training session, which is a week from today. So we're going to go ahead and hold off talking about that section. So we'll really just keep it to these top three: student, parent, and non-custodial parent. Jim, is there anything else we should add about those before we continue?
I think we've got them. You might ask if there are questions.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking. We're starting to. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and open the phones again.
The conference is no longer in lecture mode.
So one thing I did want to mention about using overrides, if you'd like, after you set an override for a student, you can come here to the comments section. The comments, it's the third level navigation under need analysis. Click on comments, and then you can actually note the student's record that you set a particular override and why, if you'd like, or however you'd like to do it. You would add a comment here. It automatically saves the date and time and the username of the person who added the comment as well. One last note, as you click off of each of these pages, if you make a change, you can either click Save and Exit, or just by clicking Next or clicking onto one of these pages, it will actually save your change. So if you're playing around with these and you might have changed something that you don't want applied to the student, be sure to come down to the bottom and hit Cancel, or undo your changes before leaving, or else it'll save them on you when you're not expecting it. Okay. Go ahead. Yes.
Did that question earlier about option 7?
Yes, it is IM only.
Yes.
Okay. So, Brett, are you still on the line?
I'm here.
Excellent. Okay, we did confirm that the answer to your question is yes, it only affects institutional methodology.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. So that concludes everything I had planned for today. So we're now opening it to any questions you might have on any aspect of need access.
Yeah, I actually have a question. I think I had read somewhere on the HUG organization, like in the HUG organization forum, that need access used to be able to be downloaded in a certain format and uploaded into PeopleSoft, and for some reason it was no longer, that option wasn't available. Can you confirm whether or not that's true? I just had heard about incompatibility issues with the export file format for downloading information into PeopleSoft for packaging.
Well, I can confirm that none of the standard downloads have changed, and I know we had several schools who were successfully able to export from Need Access and run that file into their SAM systems, including PeopleSoft.
Okay.
Last year with no issues. We have not had any feedback yet this year, but we haven't heard of any problems, and normally we hear about it fairly promptly. So that's one of the advantages to the XML file format. It hides the fields, and as long as the tags stay pretty constant, we should be in good shape. And I can, again, confirm nothing has changed.
Okay, great. Thank you.
But again, if you have any problems or concerns, please let us know.
Okay, great. Excellent.
Two more things I did want to mention while we're waiting for people to think of questions. I can't seem to get the PowerPoint to advance, but we did want to remind everyone that we do have another training session, our third and final one, on budgets and funds that is scheduled for next Tuesday, the 14th, from 1 to 2:30 Eastern Time again. And then something else we did want to mention is that I said earlier that students and parents calls are now being routed to our internal account executive team. Students and parents should continue to call the 800-282-1550 number that they've always called, but when they pick an option for Need Access, they're routed through to us. So keeping them on that phone line through that access port and you through the 800-227-2151 port helps us keep track of the calls and prioritize them a little better. So, again, those numbers are all posted on the website, so you can always refer the students there. Other questions on anything Need Access related, anything we talked about today, any other issues you've been having with the new system? Has everyone been able to log in successfully for the first time already?
Oh, yes.
Oh, good. Good. Okay, there we are. Can you see the details of the session next week? Perfect. Okay, so there we have those. And then here are our contact pieces of information. Since the internal account executive team as a whole is now handling Need Access, we have an email address here that comes to all of us, and that guarantees the fastest response possible. So any Need Access questions you have, if at all possible, should be directed to that email address, or you can always call us. And I have a note that says maybe Marty Trujillo wanted to ask a question at some point. I'm not sure if I missed that terribly. It could have been hours ago. Is Marty still on the line? Okay. All right, and I'm not hearing anyone else with questions, so we'll go ahead and wrap it up for today. Thank you so much for attending. We greatly appreciate it. Any follow-up questions, please feel free to send to us at any time. We'd be happy to help, and thank you for being a Need Access customer. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Dan?